This is a custom rack that was put together to save space and increase storage in a small apartment kitchen. This was shared in our community recently, and today we're going to kind of break down the design of this in case you're in a similar situation where you need to save some counter space, or if you just want to learn some techniques so you can customize and build your own custom storage solutions in your kitchen or around your home. And this is built entirely out of off-the-shelf EMT electrical conduit and clamps from MakerPipe.com, and you can use those materials to build all kinds of custom things without doing any welding. You just need a handheld tubing cutter to cut conduit down to size for the dimensions that you're working with, and then you use a 5mm hex wrench to assemble MakerPipe connections. And we're going to highlight the different connectors that were used and the different techniques, and there's some really good ones in here. And this was shared, like I said, in the MakerPipe Connect community. And here we can see it all finished, which is a good photo that allows us to kind of see the whole build and we can break down the design. But essentially, this is a pretty simple storage rack and really showcases the possibilities of EMT conduit. We see all kinds of really big builds, but everybody's building something custom, and it doesn't have to be a ginormous build to save space and make something unique and custom to your situation. And essentially, it's just 4 vertical pieces of conduit. You've got one in each corner. Sorry, not sure why that just went all over the place there. But you've got one in each corner, just going all the way down to the countertop. And it just goes straight down just like that. And then, like I said, you can customize the dimensions of this really easily. You can add more shelves if you want. I think he's just got technically one shelf attached to the frame, and then you've got the very top, of course, where the pots are hanging, and then you've got the counter space underneath, which normally, if you didn't have this rack there, then all you would have is this space on this counter, and you'd have all this stuff there piled up, or you just wouldn't be able to put it all there. So that's why he built this, was to save that space. But really, he used one main connector for this entire build, and that's the 90-degree connector in the corner. And that allows you to have a vertical piece of conduit running continuous through it, which comes in handy, and we'll see why here in a second. But essentially, that allows you to have this rectangular kind of corner connection when you use that connector. And so essentially, you just have the one in the middle, and then you've got the other pieces that terminate inside of the connector and then go from one side to the other, just like this. And because these clamp around the conduit, you don't have to do any welding or use any power tools. Like I said, just those couple of hand tools. But essentially, you just use 4 90-degree connectors to make this kind of rectangular shape at the top. And this works really well for all kinds of shelves, desks, really any custom kind of rectangular build like those things. You can use this technique and design for. It works really awesome. If you do anything much wider than this looks like to be just a couple feet, 2 or 3 feet. If you go much wider than this, I'd recommend kind of breaking up the span and reinforcing it with some 45-degree connectors, something like that. But if you're just working in a small area like this, then you can get away with just using these corner connections and making this rectangular frame. But you might remember I said that this would come in handy in a second, and he used the same connectors down here, the 90-degree connector. And because that connector has what we call the through connection back here, in this section, that allows the piece of conduit to run continuously through it, which means you don't have to do anything crazy. You don't have to cut the conduit like you do with PVC or something. With that 90, you can actually just put this 90-degree connector wherever you want. So if you wanted to add more shelves, you could just do the same design, add another 90 up here, and then you could just add another shelf just up there and don't have to do anything too crazy. You just add more connectors on there, add some more cross pipes, and you've got another shelf. But essentially, that's how he made this same kind of design down here with the 4 90-degree connectors. And again, it's just those pieces of conduit that go between them and terminate inside the 90, run from front to back, and then go from one side to the other there, and then front to back, just like that. And then that's pretty much the main part of the frame. And like I said, you could add as many of those shelves as you wanted. You could just not have a shelf at all and just hang up pots and pans there if you want to. If you don't have, cabinet space and you really just want to get those, off the counter or, in a good spot, you can hang those like he did up there. And it looks like he just used some simple S-hooks to do that. Just kind of has those hanging over top of the metal frame, and then just has the different pots and pans just hanging off of that and then hooked on there. And then we can see some other accessories as well. If we look closer down here at the actual countertop level, we can see where he's using rubber pipe feet, which just go on the end of EMT conduit, and they work really well, especially in this situation where you don't want to damage the counters, especially if you're in an apartment. You don't want to have to pay that fee at the end of your lease, so you can add those on there. And it also kind of doubles as a way to keep this from sliding around, because it's rubber. So on hurt surfaces like this, it kind of keeps it from sliding back and forth. So that's something that's helpful too. and it protects it, which is good. And then what I really like about this is, oftentimes with shelves, we see people use wood, different materials, but he actually used some of these wire racks as shelves here. It's kind of hard to see in this picture, but you can see that all of these things are sitting on this wire shelf. And I recommend, kind of starting with that whenever you're building something like this. Obviously, you might want to, have a specific frame size that you're thinking of, but if not, I recommend looking for your shelf material. Look for these kind of wire shelves and then build your frame based on that instead of, building a frame and then trying to find something like this that fits. That can be a little bit more challenging, but sometimes you have to do that depending on the space. But if you, if you're working with this, looks like he kind of made it to be exact in between this. You can see the vent above the oven, and then he's got the window on this side. So he was building it pretty much to fit exactly in this hole, which is pretty awesome that he found the shelf that fit on there really nicely. But essentially, he's got just that wire shelf sitting on top of the pipe, just resting there, and that's being supported. And he's got all kinds of cool storage stuff on there, and it's working really well, as you can see, to support that. And then he's got it just enough where he's got some pans underneath here, some baking sheets. He's got some, measuring cups, different things down there underneath, and he's got that spaced apart so he's can have that stuff under there and not be hindered. And then he's got all this room up here with all the pots and pans hanging off of it. And I think in his post he said he actually used 2 T-connectors somewhere. We can't really see exactly where those are on the frame. If I had to guess, I would say a good way to use those is probably from one side of this bar to the other. So probably just grab it on, and I think maybe I see it running across underneath the shelf from one side to the other, going to the other side. Don't know exactly if that's where it is. If you're watching and want to let us know where that went, but otherwise, don't really see anywhere else on here where it could be, except maybe like halfway up or something to be like a reinforcement. But I don't think so. I think it's down there underneath the shelf to support it, which is a good idea. And so that's something to keep in mind if you're going to be storing a bunch of stuff. You can add more pipes really easily to reinforce the frame. But that's pretty much it. Just those 8 90-degree connectors and the 2 T connectors. And this is a really awesome build, and really cool that he shared this. And he also shared some really helpful information in the post, like the total cost. So definitely check that out if you're interested. And you can see the full write-up with the dimensions and everything that he put in the community. So really appreciate him doing that, and a really awesome build. Hopefully you found this helpful, got some inspiration. If you have any questions, feel free to leave those down below. Thanks so much for watching. I'll see you in the next one.